Recently, I have not been really kind to my little Ricoh GR3. I've been using it as a complementary camera on recent photography outings when using my main camera with an 85mm prime lens. So I wanted to make up with it and use the Ricoh GR3 exclusively for one photography session. To be honest, I was quite intimidated to do so because I know my photography style, or at least the way I like to shoot, gravitates more towards compositions I can get on the 85mm or 50mm focal length. The Ricoh GR3, the original one, being a 28mm equivalent focal length, has a pretty wide field of view, which makes composing clean shots quite difficult, I think. I took a bunch of decent shots, but I'm not very happy with how this session turned out. But stay with me, as I will explain further on that later in the video. Pretty quickly in this session, I think I got one of my favorite shots. I really like the colors, the light, but more importantly, the interaction between the main and the second subject in this frame. The cherry on top is the presence of red elements across the frame, and specifically the neckband of the guy on the left. If you have a closer look, you'll see that it's written Ricoh. I just find it funny if you know that this shot was taken on a Ricoh GR3. Obviously, there is always a delay between the day I published the video and the day I actually went out to shoot. Especially recently, as I had to manage my time and balance between my YouTube activities and my studies as a Japanese language student here in Hiroshima. So the footage you are seeing now is actually from the 14th of October. So mid of October, yes, but still, it was only recently that we started to feel like the summer is finally over. If you've ever been in Japan during summer, you know that it is very hot and humid, so it's not easy to bear day in, day out. But finally, it came to an end and led the space for autumn, which is probably my favorite season. The temperatures are pretty much perfect. You can have a very pleasant 20-25 degrees around midday, and then when it comes to night, it's going down to 15 degrees, so you can have a very good sleep. In autumn, you can also see the beautiful maple trees turning red, which makes for beautiful sceneries which last actually longer than the sakura in spring. You can't really see them in this video as I was in a very urban area, but autumn also gives you beautiful low-angle light. Now that the borders are open and people can come doing some tourism in Japan, I would highly recommend you to come from late October to end of November. And also, in normal times, the tickets and the hotels are cheaper than the cherry blossom season in April.
Where from?
スイスから来ました。
スイス。
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 あ、スイスに行ったことありました。
あります。
あります。おー、すごいですね。
ビューティフル、ビューティフル。
ああ、いやいや。
もう一回行きたい。
来てほしいです。
日本は旅行ですか？
今年は引っ越した。今日本に住んでいます。
じゃあ頑張ってください。
ありがとうございます。
As mentioned earlier, I will now develop a little bit more on what went wrong in this photography session. After coming back home and uploading the photos on my computer, I went through all of them and selected the ones I wanted to edit, just like I do in my regular post-production workflow. But after going through all of them and seeing how much pictures I selected to edit, I was a bit concerned by the actual amount of photos I got. Given the time I was out shooting, my selection was smaller than usual, which basically means that I had less results compared to what I usually bring back home after a photo session. But you know, with my experience, I am very much aware that sometimes you are out for a short amount of time and bring back a good handful of keepers, and sometimes you go out way longer and come back with nothing significant. It is part of the whole process, and my journey has been long enough to be fully aware of this fundamental element in photography. I can honestly tell today that I am in love with the process of photography and not only with the result you can get. It seems very cliché and what you can hear from any of your favorite photographers, but I think it still takes a while to get to that point, and if you still struggle with that, I wish you can get there sometime soon. But even with that mindset, I was still bothered with something when scrolling throughout my pictures. After more thinking, I came to realize that the absence of results was more a problem linked to my attitude when shooting that day. It could be a result of my lack of familiarity with the 28mm focal length, but after thinking how I navigated the streets, I noticed that I only spent a little bit of time in the first half aiming at interesting compositions, subjects and good light. After that, I focused too much on trying to get snapshots of people at a closer distance, most of the time failing as I'm not very used to the snap function features in the GR3. The problem is that this approach of shooting lacked any kind of purpose. If you have been following me for a while, you know I like to take some candid portraits of strangers in the streets, and I am not afraid to say it, as I have a purpose and a more motivated approach that makes me wanting to get these shots. That day, I was missing all of that. I had a very little success rate, that's the thing, but even though I did better with my settings and got the shots, I would still have been lacking of any purpose, I think. The positive is that I did the exercise to understand what went wrong and managed to come with a conclusion that makes sense and which gives me a new starting point to rewire my approach for my next photography outings. I think it is very important to be criticizing your own work and, even though quite difficult, trying to be impartial and unbiased. Not blaming yourself too much, but still having a pretty strict and honest opinions toward yourselves. On that note, I hope this video brought you just even a little bit of value, especially on the question of mindset and purpose in photography. Don't hesitate to drop any comments or remarks on that question down below. And with that, I really look forward to meet you in the next one. Mata ne!